Hey writers! I wanted to get on here to talk to you today about what kindergarten has to teach us about the craft of writing. Now you're probably like, what? But just stick with me. I promise you it will make sense. But before we begin, I'm Andrea Karen Nelson. I'm the founder of Allegory Editing. At Allegory, we do developmental editing, writing coaching, query prep, publishing industry guidance. We host online writers workshops and author events. If you want to know more about us, you can check out our website, allegoryediting.com, or you can follow us on social media at Allegory Editing. And of course, if you like this video and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We just wrapped up the school year here in Seattle, and I'm sure that many of you can relate, but I've spent a good portion of the last 10 months of my life listening to remote kindergarten happening in the next room. And as I listened to my son's kindergarten literacy classes, it really got me thinking that there are a lot of really valuable lessons about the craft of writing that we can take from the kindergarten classroom. Number one, the first draft is for mistakes. My son is the kind of kid who loves to make up stories all day, every day. But when it comes time to write them down, he hates to write them down unless he feels absolutely confident that he knows how to spell it correctly. And of course, the adults in his life can't just feed him the spelling anytime he asks us, which he does, because that's what kindergarten's about, right? He wouldn't learn if he didn't do it himself. On the other hand, it does no good if he gets so frustrated that he just wants to give up and ends up with nothing on the paper at all. Now, of course, we're adults, we have spell check, but I think there's still a lot of interesting parallels that we can draw from this. Maybe you're like my son, and you convince yourself before you even start that you're a terrible writer, it's gonna be crap, no one's gonna wanna read it, and you spend so much time crossing out or deleting it or in the moment rewriting, that by the time you get done with your writing session for that day, you have little to show for it. Or maybe you're a little bit more like me, and you want to make sure that you describe that tree that your protagonist is climbing with such precision that you waste a half an hour Googling like the textural nuances of willow bark or whatever. Same thing. You get to the end of your writing session and you hardly have anything on paper. Now, that desire to get it just right and word perfect, that is a great one. As a writer, you need that instinct. It's just not what the first draft is for. The first draft is for letting your creative juices flow unencumbered and just getting those ideas down on the page. There will be plenty of time to rewrite later. The first draft is for mistakes. I'm going to say it again. The first draft is for mistakes. So once we've recognized these tendencies in ourselves, the question is, what do we do about it? My son's teacher, who is amazing, by the way, has a couple of strategies that she uses for kids who tend to get in their own way with things like writing. And the first one is inventive spelling. Just get it out there. It might be right, it might be wrong. You can go back later, but just get it out there. Do your best. Put something on the paper. Because the one thing that you have to do to be a writer is to write. And so if you get in your own way and you can't get it out there, you're never going to get anywhere, right? The second concept that she uses is supported release of control. I love this. And I think that this relates really nicely to the idea of a free write. If you're not familiar with a free write, it's the practice of sitting down to write, setting a timer, and just going. You don't stop until that timer goes off. You can do this with or without a prompt being an image or a phrase, something to kind of kickstart your creativity. I like to do about 20 to 30 minutes. You can totally start smaller and work your way up. The most important thing is that once you start writing, you do not stop. You don't hit delete, you don't erase, you don't cross things out, you don't go back and add something later, and no Googling. If you don't know what to write, just literally write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, and just keep writing that until the timer goes off. It's a really great way for getting out of that block and getting out of your own way from resisting the urge to edit your own work while you're writing it. Because remember, what is a first draft for? It's for mistakes. So go forth and make them. There will be plenty of time to rewrite later. Which gets me to lesson number 2. And there is pretty much no way that I can deliver this without channeling my best kindergarten teacher voice. When you're done, you've just begun. I walked by my son's room one day and they had just finished, I think they were drawing a picture and then writing a simple sentence to go along with it. And his teacher gave them this reminder. Great! They had gotten this on paper. Amazing! First draft, done. Now is the time to go back and add more details, fix your mistakes, any upside down letters, change them, add to it, make it better. Now is the time to rewrite. I think if I were allowed only one piece of advice to give to writers, and heaven help me if I'm ever only allowed to give one piece of advice to writers, because anyone who has ever worked with me as their developmental editor knows brevity is not my strength. But were I allowed only one piece of advice, it would be this. When you're done, you've just begun. So after you get that first draft down on paper, and take a moment to celebrate, because it is a huge accomplishment, that is when you roll up your sleeves and you really get down to business. That's when you go back and you look at, is your plot well formed? Does it have any holes? Does it make sense inside the world of your story? And are your characters fully developed? Do they have a nice, complete arc? Do they change in some way from beginning to end? Do they have clear and strong objectives, obstacles, and stakes? And you also want to look, of course, at the relationships between your characters. Then there's your setting. Are your descriptions vivid? Do they evoke a strong sense of place? Do they use enough detail that your reader can really picture themselves inside the story? Do you remember to include all 5 senses in your descriptions? And dialogue. Is the speech of each individual character distinct? Does the dialogue move the plot forward, or is it too laden with exposition? What does the way that your characters speak reveal about them? And is that what you intend to show? Then, of course, there's all the mechanics. Is your point of view consistent? Do you have any tense mistakes? Have you checked for spelling and grammar and punctuation? And before you freak out, just take a deep breath with me. You do not have to tackle this all at once, and you don't have to tackle it alone. On this channel, we're going to do upcoming videos on rewrite strategies, and we'll also go into much more detail in all of the elements that I just went over. And of course, I cannot stress enough the importance of bringing in an outside eye to look at your work. We'll do a future video on the how, when, and why of getting feedback on your work. The point that I want to get across to you is not that finishing a complete first draft is not a big deal. Because it is. It's a really big deal. Not very many people finish a full draft. But I will tell you, a whole lot fewer people finish that first draft and persevere and put in all of the hard work and the many rewrites that it takes to get your work polished, to get your work query ready, publish ready. The point I want to get across to you is that it is a lot of work. I think knowing that and mentally preparing yourself for that can go a really long ways in setting yourself up for success. I think it's really easy when we read something that is published, and if it's done well, like anything done well, there appears from the outside to be kind of an ease to it, right? And so I think that it's really easy to imagine that the writer just sat down at their computer and, whoa, perfectly formed manuscript. That literally never happens. It is not uncommon for writers to do dozens and dozens of rewrites for a single manuscript. You have to put in the work. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep coming back. We're going to do plenty more videos. We're going to give you all the tools you need to finish that manuscript. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Andrea Karen Nelson, and this is Allegory Editing. Happy writing!